And before you became acting chief, what was your position?
Fire marshal,
And how long have you been fire marshal?
since August of 2000.
How long have you been on the fire department?
Since April of 1987.
During that time, so you basically worked your way up through the ranks?
Yes.
Well, Mark was chief. What was your relationship with Mark?
He had been chief about 6 or 8 months when I was promoted to fire marshal. So it was a pretty close working relationship.
Have you in fact acted as his fill-in when he's been gone from time to time?
Yes.
And you and Mark would talk about issues. Mark would discuss matters with you and bounce ideas off you?
Daily.
Okay. What's the attitude, or how has the fire department reacted to the termination of Mark and Andy?
Well, it's hard to speak for everybody, but
your observation.
There's a lot of mixed feelings. There's people that are stunned, people that are just up in the air, in kind of limbo. There's some people that just go on about their duties.
Mm-hmm.
Firefighters are pretty adapted to change.
You've worked with Mark for a number of years.
Yes.
Is Mark the kind of person that if he were demoted from chief to another position in the department would be likely to undermine a new chief?
Mark would never do anything, I don't think, to do anything negative to the fire department.
How would you describe Mark's skills as a firefighter?
Excellent.
Did he have a nickname in the department?
Oh yeah, a bunch of them, honestly. I'm not sure I can state them all, but early one I got was Rocket, just because he just flitted around like a rocket.
How would you describe Mark's performance over the years as a firefighter and as chief?
As a firefighter, just aggressive and gung-ho, and as an officer going up through the ranks, very determined to have his crews ready at all times. Took a lot of pride in having the people that worked for him do good. And as a chief, he was had a vision. We set goals, and we tried to attain those goals. So.
If the Clinton Fire Department were called to an industrial incident at either Equistar or ADM, would Mark be a guy that you'd want to have on your team?
Without a doubt.
When you were asked to serve as acting chief, what was the first question you asked with regard to EMS billing?
Well, the first thing I asked is just what am I supposed to do as far as keep it the same? Or,
Who did you ask?
Jeff Warren.
And what were you told?
I was told that we were going to have to get our percentages lowered. Quite frankly, at that time, I was kind of out of the loop as far as the EMS billing portion of the job. So it took a little investigation.
Did he talk to you? Did he talk to you about an expected ratio of ALS to BLS calls?
70-30 was the standard.
Was there any explanation given as to how you were to attain the targets of 70-30?
No, and again, being kind of uninformed with the way the EMS was being handled, tried to do some questioning to look into that. He just told me to do the job as if I were the chief, and do what I had to do. So.
Well, it appears that the city has spent considerable money on lawyers and experts and had settled a lawsuit about EMS billing. Were you given any instructions about what the fire department or the city was doing wrong?
I've just been pretty much out of the loop as far as what took place in the settlement.
Yeah, I mean, after you became chief and were and started asking questions about EMS billing, did Mr. Horn tell you what was being done wrong and needed to be corrected?
Just that the coding wasn't correct and that we needed to go to a third-party billing company. And we looked into that immediately. So.
And in fact, there haven't been any bills that have been sent out by the city since Mark and Andy were placed on administrative leave, have there?
No.
As far as you know, has the fire department determined that it was doing, that the paramedics were doing anything wrong in terms of their documentation and coding?
As far as I know, up to this point, no. We've had training last week, 1 day, and 2 days this week with our for our new billing procedures. And so we're talking about narratives and that kind of stuff. And it looks like right now, the way we're doing our narratives is correct.
So you've had training from the new company, and there haven't been any lights that have gone off and said, aha, this is something we've been doing wrong?
Not that I've seen yet.
Okay. Have you discussed with Michelle Smith, the president of the company who will now be doing the billing for the city of Clinton, what her expectations might be in terms of the amount of ALS bills as opposed to BLS bills?
Just initially when I contacted the companies and just trying to feel them all out, I asked her if she thought we should be in the 70% range.
And what did she say?
Well, she asked me a lot of questions about whether we transported to different hospitals or whether we did nursing home transfers, and I said we're just strictly in for 911 service going to one hospital. She said we'd probably be higher than 70%.
Did she give you a number that she thought you might realistically be at?
Initially, no. She did a little looking into it. She said she could see us in the 80%.
Okay. She suggests it might even be as high as 85.
Mm-hmm.
That's a yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
And you're aware that Kip Ireland came to the department and conducted classes for EMS documentation this summer?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that?
Just to continue our education, you know, post lawsuit, to try to better ourselves.
You know Tim Schulteis?
I know, yeah.
Well, you were a member of the team that interviewed him when he came on the department, right?
Yeah.
And his interview was pretty impressive, as I suggested. After the interview, did his performance meet what you expected based on the interview?
Well, to be completely honest, working in the Fire Prevention Bureau, I had a lot of duties, not a lot of time to just sit and observe. So really all of my knowledge of his poor job performance was secondhand, for the most part.
You didn't have any real personal dealings with him
No.
as fire marshal?
No.
Since the filing of the lawsuit, when issues came up with regard to EMS billing or matters connected with the lawsuit, did you notice anything different about Mark's usual approach to discussing matters with you?
The only thing different, the lawsuit case just was taboo. I mean, we didn't discuss that.
Did you conclude that perhaps Mark had been instructed to not talk about it?
He pretty much confirmed that. You know, I tried to a couple times just ask what's going on, where is it at, and it's just It was not a subject for conversation.
He was under restrictions due to confidentiality.
Yes.
Do you believe that Mark was aware of any questionable billing practices before the Schulteis lawsuit was filed?
No, I do not.
Now, after the lawsuit was filed, Mark and Andy and others went to Cedar Rapids or Des Moines to talk with the U.S. Attorney. You knew about that?
I did know about that, yes.
And did they report to you that they'd asked the U.S. Attorney to tell them if they were doing something wrong so they could fix it?
Vaguely. I think I was more privy to information about the ride out, but I knew what it was about. So.
Okay. How was Mark's attitude toward public perception of the fire department and adherence to rules and regulations?
He was pretty strict, to say the least.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Doe?
When you were told that you would be expected to meet the target of 70-30 on ambulance billing for ALS and BLS, did you believe that that might require you to downgrade ambulance calls in order to achieve that predetermined target?
Just to clarify, I don't think I was told I was expected, but I was told that we should look at getting closer to that 70%. Quite honestly, at that point, I didn't know what we were going to be required to do to get there. So,
Okay. Do you believe it would be wrong to purposely downgrade ambulance calls in order to achieve a predetermined target percentage?
if it were outside of our training, yes.
What do you mean outside of your training?
Well, I mean, the people that have been to the Page Wolfberg classes, they've been told how to code. Yeah, so if they're coding outside of that, that would be incorrect.
Okay, so if the appropriate code would be an ALS1 emergency, and in order to meet 70%, you coded somebody down to a basic life support transport, that would be wrong.
That would be fraud, I do believe.
Okay, somebody would be getting a free ride, so to speak.
Yes.
And that would be just as illegal as upcharging?
I would assume, yes.
Okay. Were you aware that Andy McGovern did investigate and talk to others when Mr. Schulteis brought his initial concerns to him?
Can you define that a little better?
Yeah, after Mr. Schulteis came to Andy McGovern with his concerns about coding, did you know whether or not Andy investigated and talked to others before making a decision or concluding that Schulteis was wrong?
I do believe he looked into it first, yes.
Okay. Were you aware that Mr. McGovern contacted the Muscatine Fire Department, Burlington Fire Department, KIPP Ireland, and various Medicare documents?
Not completely, no.
But you were aware that he did some of that?
I knew that he was working on it, yes.
Has the fire department ever been told what it was doing that was considered to be wrong by the city, other than the percentage of the ALS charges being too high?
All I know is it pertains to coding, but we're, until we've got a new way to do it, that's the way we're doing it.
That's all I have.
Mr. Stoffel?
You were, you talked to someone from, what is it, PCC? Is that, some outsourcing that we're going through?
Yes, we looked over approximately 8 RFPs.
And